Welcome back to the Mentored Show, which offers quick lessons packaged within minisodes for busy founders and startup leaders like you. I'm Adel, and I'm being mentored live and unscripted by Ed, who's built, sold, turned around, and scaled startups all the way to the New York Stock Exchange. He's based in the US, a developed economy, and I'm based in Dubai, a hub within an emerging economy. And we compare notes. This is real talk, no scripts, no theory. Let's get into it. This behavior, people interrupting each other, is it because they don't trust each other, or is it the other way around? That because of this behavior, trust cannot be built.
If trust is not an integral part of the culture of a business, again, I would go back and say that the potential for scale growth is greatly diminished, if not eliminated completely. So trust is a component you have to have in a high functioning, high driven team. I would actually say that if trust is missing in a team dynamic, I would start by looking at myself as the founder CEO and ask the question of myself, what is it that I do that does not engender trust? Do I trust other people? Because if I don't trust other people, that telegraphs itself to my team. Another potential is, do we allow the company to make mistakes, honest mistakes, without punitive action? Are people afraid of making mistakes because if they make a mistake, something negative happens? And this is a really hard balance because you want people to make mistakes, but they can't break the company either. You want people with good judgment as part of your team to aggressively move quickly, but know that if they make a mistake, there's a graceful recovery that they can do. And I'd say the last thing that may be at work in this group dynamic where trust is lacking is you may have somebody in the group that is the smartest guy in the room. And the smartest guy in the room tends to be a terrible listener, tends to talk way too much, and has a complete lack of respect for anybody's opinion except their own. That's a problem. And if someone believes that they're the smartest guy in the room, they really, truly believe and act that way, that may be a person you're going to have to get rid of because you're forever going to be spending too much time trying to contain that individual who is not very self-aware.
This reminds me, you remember we discussed this documentary on Netflix, The Last Dance, about Michael Jordan and how he was exhibiting that behavior of dismissing everyone, doesn't pass the ball because he believes that he can bring the wins to the team. And he's been doing that as well. But somehow the coach, I forgot what's his name. I don't know whether he benched him or I don't know what happened. I don't remember really, but it was around that line, that concept of he will have a bad influence on the team because there is no trust basically amongst the team because everything revolves around Michael Jordan. And that was part of the interview.
Yeah, I think when you rely too much on a single individual to make a team or a business successful, you do so at great risk. I think you can certainly have a superstar on a sports team that shoots the basketball better, throws the football better, kicks the soccer ball better. Certainly every team has their most valuable player that, quite frankly, the team agrees, hey, this person makes us a better team because of their God-given skill set. Having said that, you can either make that individual stand out to such a point that it actually becomes a weakness. Because if they decide to leave, if they decide to do something different, if they have an off day, it can be a very contagious downtrend. I think we can appreciate people with incredible skill sets, programmers that write high quality code quickly, salespeople that close deals faster than normal, customer support professionals that make their client happy every single time because they just have good rapport with people and they do great problem solving. You can celebrate individuals like that and set them out as the standard that we aspire to, with the full recognition that Right now, this individual is at the top of their game. They won't always be. That's life. That's a realistic conversation about how we have peaks and valleys as human beings. But if we over idolize an individual, it is going to come at a long term negative cost. And I think you have to use that success. Don't ignore it. You have to use that success as a positive catalyst to the entire company.
I think this also creates a reliance on decisions coming from one person rather than people taking initiative, which impacts scalability. I've seen this as well. I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I try to detect it as soon as possible, but sometimes I give orders and then I notice that people start waiting for me to highlight things and give them what to do rather than them coming back with possible solutions and seeking advice. Do you have any advice to minimize this from happening, to remaining aware of when I'm doing that, when I'm being too bossy, causing them to become passive?
Yeah, I think that this scenario you've painted happens a lot, happens all the time, actually. And it happens with companies that are startups all the way through to public companies. It comes back to the beginning of our conversation. As the CEO, you need to start looking in the mirror and asking yourself, what are the behaviors that I bring to my business, my management team that holds us back? Because you could be the problem, certainly. If you want the longevity of the role of CEO, you're going to have to evolve as a human being with where your business is at that point in time. I also think that as you're building out a team, you're going to be going through various phases of growth. Sometimes not every team member will make that journey with you. Sometimes their skills, sometimes their life choices, sometimes their stage in life won't allow them to grow and change the way the business is growing and changing. And you're going to have to replace them at the appropriate time. And it's not a pejorative negative thing. It's just the business is outpacing the abilities of that individual, and it's time for them to move on. Help them out. Help them find their next job if you can. I also think that I had this conversation very recently with a CEO, and it happens to be, when do I give orders versus when do I sit back and watch my team do their work? And my comment, I thought, was fairly clear and simplistic for a specific reason. My comment was, be very clear with yourself about what you need, when you need it by, and why it's important, and telegraph that to your management team. The individuals in your management team have to also be clear about what they need, why it's important, and when they need it, and communicate that down to their direct reports so that everybody in the company understands why the pace of work, why the pressures of work, and why the fixation on a specific deliverable or a date is so important to the success of the business. Once you've done that, get out of the way. Because so long as the results you need and want are delivered, does it really matter how it got there? Because if you get what you want, product quality, product feature, on time delivery, if you get all of those things, does it really matter how you got there? And the point of all that is to say, let people do their job. They may take 10 steps to deliver the result. You might do it in 7. Does it matter? If it's on time to the level of standard that you wanted and it delivers the value for the business, it doesn't matter. You can come back later after the fact and say, Adel, thank you for delivering that product with the level of quality and the timeliness necessary. I really appreciate it. I do, however, want you to go back and think about what steps could you have taken to do that a little faster and a little bit more efficiently for the next time we have another one of these crunch times, right? It's not a negative criticism saying, great job. Now, how can you be better? Because the whole notion is we can always be better. But I'm not going to penalize somebody for taking 10 steps versus 7. That's not the point. We can always get to faster and more efficient processes. But for right now, let's celebrate the win, take a pause, then come back and say, what can we learn from this? And I think once you start to ingrain that mindset into a team, the company will do fantastic things.
That's it for this minisode. Big thanks to Ed and to all of you for tuning in. If this sparked something, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and make sure you share it within your network. Got a question for Ed? Drop it within the comments. See you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated organization. The content provided is for informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. We encourage listeners to conduct their own research and consult with relevant professionals before making any business or career decisions.